like I've had that longevity in the sport. And one of the things that went through my mind was, is he healthier now? Like a year from now, when he's not training for the games, is he healthier than
Oh,
he?
he should be healthier.
I think so too. I agree 100%. We're going to do this. It's about Matt Fraser and some news around him. You probably already heard it by now, but we're going to talk about it. And then after that, we'll get into a book review that you're not going to want to miss. So
That's for sure.
let's go ahead. Matt Fraser.
Can
This
you
just came
go
out.
into this?
So if you are at all interested in the world of CrossFit and you have heard of the CrossFit Games, there's definitely two people that you would have heard about at some point or another. And the first one is Rich Froning. He won the CrossFit Games 4 times. He was the first like really truly dominant force. And then the second person you probably would have heard of if you're involved recently is Matt Fraser. And he basically, on the men's side, replaced Rich Froning when Rich retired. And Matt surpassed Rich's championships, and he now has 5 as opposed to Rich's 4. And he announced the other day, maybe 2 days ago, 3 days ago at this point, that he is retiring from the sport.
Yep.
That he is done.
First of all, I do not blame him.
No, not at all. And I think I don't know exactly, but I think he's probably like 30 or 31.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about how old he is.
Yeah.
But I don't blame him at all. Not one bit. He said he wanted to do it basically so he could live his life and not be so regimented all the time and miss out on, family things. It's kind of what I took out of his post.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
big news.
It's massive news, and I think that this was not the year for him to do it. So he had 4 victories. So both Rich and Matt had their second place finish, and then Rich won 4 in a row. Matt had 2 second place finishes and then won 5 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So his career has been a little bit longer in a more intense variation of the sport, I think.
I agree.
So that doesn't mean that he was any closer to losing in those 5 years, because he literally has not been touched in the leaderboard for 3 years.
He was far further from losing at every given moment.
Yeah, there was never one moment. Like Rich had those moments where I was like, maybe this isn't his year.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the first event. And then Matt literally never had that moment.
Never wavered. I mean, obviously, except for his second place finishes. But after that, it was complete dominance, never wavering. Yeah. And I guess to his point, like in order to achieve that, he really did have to give up like every other aspect of his life, which I'm sure Rich did too. But, it's just like you said, a higher iteration of the sport. The performance is just another generation.
It's the same evolution for any sport. Like it's so easy to draw the parallels, like Michael Jordan basketball, and then you have LeBron James basketball.
Yeah.
Different eras, both are incredibly impressive. I have no doubt that like Michael Jordan probably would still be the best player if you put him into today, but you can't really compare them apples to apples.
You just can't. You really can't.
Yeah.
Well, you can't, but with something like CrossFit, which, I mean, it's the same thing with track and field or swimming. Like, really, you still can't, but it's a little more straightforward because you can just look at the times and the numbers, right?
Yep.
With basketball, a team sport, you definitely can't. There's just too many variables.
Yeah, and it on paper makes sense, but I never thought to make those comparisons because there's this like unknown element of competition, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in first place and you only need top 5 to stay in first by a solid margin, you're just going to back off a little.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, because you're Rich Froning and you just like to be super dominant for no reason, or you're Matt Fraser, same thing. Exactly. But like everyone else is fighting for their life, and you're just like, you just got to hang on. You got to still try, but could they have gone faster in individual events? Sure. But that's why I don't like to compare them, because you put them next to each other over and over and over and over again, which they did do.
Yeah, the first year that Matt was in there, they were
Yep.
next to each other. Yep. And yeah. So that is, like I said, you technically still can't compare it because of those factors that you just mentioned, like the competitive component of it, just like having them next to each other, but
Yeah.
also the evolution of the sport too, like the knowledge of how to train and that sort of stuff has evolved over times and advanced and gotten better. And
So performance enhancing drugs.
that too, they've gotten trickier.
I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I can't leave it off the table.
No, you can never leave it off the table in any sort of sport because, I mean, you just can't.
Yeah.
But okay, so definitely big news, and you could argue about goats for days. Um, Something that crossed my mind when I heard this news and read his post, and just kind of finding the parallels to my own life. I'm a couple years younger than him, but I've been in the sport as long as him. Like, obviously,
Longer.
maybe, yeah. Well, I mean, he's still trained like Olympic lifting, so
Right.
I would kind of count that, I suppose. But yeah, like I've had that longevity in the sport, and one of the things that went through my mind was, is he healthier now? Like a year from now, when he's not training for the games, is he healthier than
Oh,
he?
he should be healthier.
I think so too. I agree 100%, because I think they talk about it in the CrossFit certification, or maybe just some random CrossFit Journal article or something. But performance doesn't necessarily correlate to health is one of the things they talk about all the time.
Yeah, longevity is that factor. So that's
Yeah.
like different positions on a football team have different health,
Yeah.
because who's getting hit the most? That's just a factor that you can't avoid. So the less you get hit,
Mm-hmm.
the healthier you are. So that guy does have to take a beating. Our last episode was about, is longer, you need hours to work out, right?
Mm.
So you don't need hours to work out, but he was doing it anyway.
Yeah, you need hours to be the best, to be the have the highest performance output. You do, but to be healthy, no. And like we were getting at last time, those extra hours, even though they might improve your back squat or your mile time, they're taking a toll somewhere else in your body, whether it's simply joints or if it's some other, metabolic or hormonal thing that you might be messing up in the long term.
Do you think there's a finite number of repetitions in a given joint through a human life cycle?
I mean, I think there's like a theoretical, like conceptually, yes. I don't know what the number is, and I'm sure it would change drastically from person to person depending on how those reps are performed. But wear and tear is a real thing, and you just can't avoid it no matter
Yeah,
what. Like friction exists, heat energy exists, like
yeah.
something is happening. It's not a perfect like transfer of energy.